Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, a mass demonstration in Tel Aviv calls for the preservation of Israel's democracy amid the government's intention to implement judicial reform. Israeli Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu confirms that Jerusalem and Washington have agreed to deepen cooperation on how to confront the Islamic Republic of Iran. The European Union has adopted a new package of sanctions against the Ayatollah regime and IRGC, despite voiced threats by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard's commander-in-chief. An estimated 130,000 Israelis attended demonstrations at various locations across Israel to protest the Israeli government's proposed judicial reform. The main demonstration was held in Israel's central city of Tel Aviv, drawing an estimated 100,000 people, who were subsequently joined by another 20,000 after a separate demonstration that was held at a nearby square in the city concluded. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid, who attended the protest along with other leaders of opposition parties, dubbed the demonstration to constitute a struggle for Israel's democratic nature.
מה שאתם רואים פה היום זו הפגנה בעד המדינה. זו הפגנה להגנה על המדינה. אנשים שאוהבים את המדינה באו הנה היום כדי להגן על הדמוקרטיה שלה, להגן על בתי המשפט שלה, להגן על הרעיון של חיים משותפים וטוב משותף. יש פה אוהבי ישראל שבאו להפגין למען מדינה יהודית, דמוקרטית, לפי ערכי מגילת העצמאות, ואנחנו לא נוותר עד שננצח.
Over the course of decades, consecutive governments in Israel have called for much-needed reform to the judicial branch, which increasingly gained far-reaching powers at the expense of the executive and legislative branches. Nevertheless, efforts by Israel's incumbent executive branch, backed by a coalition of a 64-mandate majority within the 120-seat parliament, or Knesset in Hebrew, to bring about reform has been met by a vigorous response by the judicial branch, whose top judge explicitly accused those seeking reform of intending to crush the judicial system, an allegation that effectively insinuates an imminent threat to Israel's democracy. And while the Israeli government vehemently rejected these allegations leveled against it, seeming public concerns drove Israelis from all walks of life and political camps to flood the streets and calls on the government to protect Israel's democratic nature.
I'm protesting because the democracy in Israel is at stake. I'm a student, a law student, and once I heard about the reform in the legal system, I was shocked. I can't believe that the changes they want to make will make such a difference in the democracy in Israel. It's basically a change in the regime, and we as a student protest are against it and want to save our democracy.
Because we are fighting for democracy. We fought it in this country, in the army for 30 years for our freedom, and we won't let this government to take our freedom. We fight for democracy.
Responding to the mass protests and remarks to the Likud party's faction meeting earlier today, Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu proclaimed that his government is not destroying Israel's democracy, rather, it is working tirelessly to save it. Turning to the West Bank districts of Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley, where as part of Operation Wavebreaker, IDF, ISA or Shin Bet, and Border Police Special Operations units conducted counter-terror activity over the weekend, during which a total of 16 suspected terror operatives were arrested. It is important to know that a number of cited incidents of exchanges of fire were reported during the operational activity in the city of Jenin, the village of Nur Shams, and Nablus. During the course of one of the cited exchanges, the IDF spokesperson's unit confirmed to TV7 that an Israeli special operator sustained light injuries. It was taken to a hospital for further treatment. Separately, an attempted stabbing attack was reportedly thwarted at the Israeli Sde Ephraim farm situated northwest of the city of Ramallah. Palestinian assailant was said to have stopped his vehicle at the entrance to the farm and entered it by foot. Circulating footage of the incident purported to show the assailant rushing toward one of the farmers, who responded by firing at the Palestinian attacker. And while the Israeli farmer did not sustain any injuries, the Palestinian attacker was subsequently proclaimed dead. Turning to Jerusalem, where Israeli Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu asserted that the United States and Israel are deepening cooperation on ways to confront the Islamic Republic of Iran. In opening remarks to his cabinet in Jerusalem, Netanyahu highlighted the importance of his meeting last week with U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
ביום חמישי האחרון נפגשתי עם היועץ לביטחון לאומי של ארצות הברית ג'ייק סאליבן. הביקור הזה מתקיים בזמן מיוחד, זמן של אתגרים רציניים לביטחון הלאומי שלנו והזדמנויות רציניות לשלום עם שכנינו. במוקד השיחות בינינו עמדו האתגרים הביטחוניים האזוריים וכמובן בראשם איראן. וכן דרכי הפעולה, דרכים לשיתוף פעולה בינינו מול אתגר משותף זה.
Netanyahu further announced that Washington and Jerusalem will work to intensify cooperation on matters related to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that a special joint working group will be formed to tackle the rising threat.
אני חייב להגיד שבתום הפגישות אני מתרשם שיש רצון הדדי אמיתי להגיע להבנות בנושא הזה, שהוא בעל חשיבות מכרעת לביטחון המדינה. והדיונים בנושא יתקיימו בשבועות הקרובים בין ירושלים לוושינגטון.
Turning to Tehran, where the commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, Major General Hossein Salami, responded to the European Parliament's resolution last week, which called upon the European Commission and Council respectively to designate the RGC a terrorist organization.
ما که هرگز از این جور بیانها و حتی عمل نهفته در این بیانها هم نگران نیستیم، چون هر چقدر دشمنان ما به ما فرصت عمل بدن ما قوی‌تر عمل میکنیم. سپاه اساساً در عمل قوی کار انجام میده.
Despite its claim, the RGC top commander leveled a threat toward Europe not to test the Islamic Republic's will to retaliate.
این اروپا از اشتباهات گذشته خودش درس نگرفته. فکر میکنه که با این بیانیه ها میتونه این سپاه عظیم رو که سرشار از قدرت ایمان و توکل و قوت اراده هست، این رو میتونه مثلا متزلزل کنه.
Meanwhile, in Brussels, the 27-member bloc held a foreign ministerial today, during which a new package of sanctions was adopted against Iran, which, according to Sweden, that currently holds the EU's rotating presidency, targets those driving repression. Ahead of the meeting, the outspoken European foreign ministers voiced a cohesive need to respond to the brutality of the Ayatollah regime in general and the RGC in particular.
Wir erleben in Iran nach wie vor ein brutales Vorgehen des Regimes gegen die eigene Bevölkerung. Das iranische Regime, die Revolutionsgarden terrorisieren ihre eigene Bevölkerung Tag für Tag. Daher ist es wichtig, dass wir heute hier ein 4. Sanktionsregime gegen das iranische Regime und insbesondere auch gegen die Revolutionsgarden auf den Weg bringen.
Also ich unterstütze natürlich die Sanktionen. Es ist jetzt das 4. Mal, dass wir im Rat Sanktionen gegen den Iran erlassen. Ich bedauere das. Ich hatte ja die Hoffnung gehabt, dass wir den Iran über das Wiener Atomabkommen wieder zurück, wenn man so will, an den Tisch führen können, der internationalen Gemeinschaft. Momentan ist aber das Regime in Teheran auf Kollisionskurs mit uns, der internationalen Gemeinschaft, aber auch im Kollisionskurs mit den eigenen Menschen im Land, wo sie hier versuchen, mit aller Brutalität diese zivilgesellschaftliche Bewegung niederzuschlagen.
Well, there is unanimous accord on the need to further push for sanctions against Iran's brutal institutions. The call by the European Parliament to designate the RGC a terrorist organization was evidently met with a cautious response.
On Iran, I just spoke and say that we do condemn the repression and do ask for the civil liberties to be respected as they should. May I recall that Iran did sign the UN Pact on human rights and civil rights. Now, regarding the RCG, may I recall you that they are already, as a group, under sanction since 2010 because of their participation to proliferation activities on massive destruction arms. Now we are considering, but this is not a decision to be made today, we're considering to sanction them under another regime. We're looking closely at it and nothing is ruled out.
Well, there are increasing calls on governments around the world to label the RGC a terrorist organization, including within the European Union. The bloc's top diplomat highlighted that unless a judiciary in one of the 27 member states does not call for the designation of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, the EU will not deliberate the matter, regardless of the RGC's terror-related track record.
Well, look, there are many interesting opinions about that, but it is something that cannot be decided without a court decision first. You cannot say, I consider you a terrorist because I don't like you. It has to be when a court of one member state issue a legal statement, a concrete condemnation, and then we work at the European level. But it has to be first a court decision.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. We would like to encourage you, pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, as well as for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you a Shavua Mevurach, and God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time.